Dear students, welcome to this lecture. Today, our topic for deliberation is Development Administration in Global North. The objectives for this lecture are to explore the concept of development administration, to explore the concept of Global North, to understand the evolution of development administration in Global North, to understand the implications of development administration in Global North. Before discussing development administration in Global North, let me give a brief introduction. Development administration is a dynamic concept which brings about socio-economic and political changes in society. Aiming towards development, it strives for change, growth, progress, and overall development in every sphere of country. It was first introduced by Edward Widener. So, Edward Widener is popularly known as father of development administration. According to Gaunt, quote, development administration is that aspect of public administration in which the focus of attention is on organizing and administering public agencies in such a way as to stimulate and facilitate defined program of social and economic progress. It has the purpose of making change attractive and possible to the population generally, unquote. Now, let us talk about Global North. The Global North does not refer to the geographic region in any traditional sense, but rather to the relative power and wealth of countries in distinct parts of the world. Societies within it are internally stratified and diverse, such that not everyone in the Global North is rich and powerful. The term Global North is a widely accepted synonym for the first world or developed countries, which are also the richest countries in the world according to metrics including GNP, per capita, and the Legatum Prosperity Index. The Global North is the economic opposite of Global South, a term coined in 1969 to describe the world's developing and least developed countries. Generally speaking, the countries of the Global North have well-developed mature economies and are both wealthy and politically stable. They also tend to be the most technologically advanced countries and their population growth is low. Most are located in North America, Europe, and Northern Asia, although a handful of southern countries including Australia and New Zealand are usually considered part of the Global North. The Global North has roughly 25% of world's population, but owns 80% of the wealth and tends to dominate Global South both politically and economically. A popular method for determining the countries of the Global North is to use the United Nations Human Development Index (HDI) as a guideline. HDI is an aggregate metric that compiles multiple statistics to determine the overall quality of life in a country. Quality of life tends to parallel economic development, which makes HDI an excellent measure of whether a country belongs in the Global North or Global South. Most experts consider any country with an HDI of 0.80 within a range of 0.00 to 1.00 to be a part of the Global North. Dear students, now let us talk about development administration in Global North. It should be accepted that distinguishing between development and non-development administration becomes difficult in most developed nations in view of the common administrative machinery for regulating and promoting the traditional as well as developmental functions of governance. Let's talk about high level of differentiation. Administrative systems in developed nations are highly differentiated and functionally specific. This status has emerged out of long evolution of the politico-administrative system, where each new governance institution has emerged in response to the need for performing specific functions. Most of the governments in developed nations have experienced the phases of stable growth and have been conscious in assigning new responsibilities to the existing institutions or in creating new structures for undertaking emergent functions. The result is highly specialized system of administration that engages itself in regulating various segments of development like agriculture, industry, commerce, education, etc. Now, let us discuss high degree of professionalization. Structural differentiation and functional specificity have led to a high degree of internal specialization of bureaucracy. This has become possible primarily on account of a visible stress on recruitment on the basis of merit and specialized educational background of the entrants into the civil services. In France, Japan, the United States of America, and most other developed countries, it is the technocrat who has been recruited to hold important administrative posts and conduct the affairs of organizations involved in development administration. It's only in Great Britain that the legacy of generalist administrator continues to dominate. Although since the late 1960s, as a result of the implementation of Fulton Committee recommendations, there has been an increasing amount of specialization in the structure of bureaucracy in Britain. Students, let us discuss about the great stress on training in global north. In most developed countries, civil servants undergo rigorous training, not only immediately after their entry into the civil service, but also throughout their career. With an intensive technical background through the education system in which they have been socialized, the specialized training imparted to them on the various functional areas makes them fully competent to undertake technical tasks required in the process of development administration. Specialized training institutions function in all developed nations that provide training in a specific area of governance. Training in developed nations is imparted not only in realms of knowledge enhancing and skill development, but also given in attitudinal transformation whenever required. Now, let us discuss about a motivated workforce. In developed nations, the basis for recruitment of civil servants is achieving rather than ascription. It is the merit of a person that not only brings him into the civil service, and it is his competence alone which pushes him to the higher ladders of governance system. It is interesting to know that because of the flexibility in the recruitment of civil service at higher level, in most developed nations, a large number of competent individuals specialized in different areas of development administration are inducted into the civil service through a pattern of lateral entry and contractual appointments. Service conditions and compensation system for those entering the civil service are made flexible in order to accommodate them and retain for whatever period they are needed. Thus, in developed nations, not only self-motivated individuals are inducted into the administrative system through aggressive recruitment, but providing them requisite attractions and supporters also retain them. Now, let us discuss about the state-of-the-art technology of global north. While in most developing countries, because of the scarce financial resources, it is not always feasible to introduce modern technology into the development administration programs. The situation is different in developed nations, where financial constraints rarely come in the way of promoting technology in the functioning of governance system. It is well known that the revolution in information technology enveloped the administrative systems in most developed countries much earlier than the case in developing nations. The level of computerization in administrative management in the Russian Federation, the UK, the US, the Japan has remained high over the past 3 decades and more. This has helped not only in the formulation of sound public policies, making rational decisions, monitoring development programs, implementing projects, and keeping a watch on the delivery system. But this high level of administrative technology has also developed in the client and customers a greater respect for the governance system. As the penetration capacity of a polity increases, the level of trust of people in the government also goes up proportionately. Now, let us discuss effective integration. In most developed countries, there has been a discernible improvement in the coordinative mechanism in the field of development administration as well as regulatory management of public affairs. This movement has taken 2 shapes. First, the top level hierarchy in the government has been able to centralize information and decision making through a series of institutions directly working under the chief executive. Second, specific integrative mechanisms at various levels which bring about coordination among various government organizations working in areas requiring mutual collaboration and cooperation have to be created. The strengthening of the executive office of the President of USA, the Cabinet Secretariat in the UK, the President Secretariat in France, and the Chancellor Secretariat in Germany are only a few examples of the first kind of initiatives. As for the second kind of instrumental innovations, there are scores of examples. Various corporations, advisory bodies, standing committees, and policy councils have been able to continuously provide directions to development policy and administration in most developed nations. Now, let us discuss sound regulatory mechanisms of development administration in global north. An interesting aspect of administration of development programs in developed nations relates to effective role of government in regulating the private sector that's mostly responsible for operating and managing economic units. For instance, in the United States of America, the 9 independent regulatory commissions such as Interstate Commerce Commission, Federal Reserve Board, and other regulatory bodies in important commercial and financial areas have played a most effective role in not only curbing activities against people's interests, but also in giving them direction in their policies and programs. In other developed countries, also there are regulatory mechanisms that have helped a systematic conduct of development administration activities in various areas. Students, let us discuss public-private partnership. For a long time in Britain, a number of nationalized industries functioned in the economic sector, but Margaret Thatcher brought about economic reforms not only through denationalization of most industries and commercial operations, but also by instituting the process of privatization on a big scale. Thatcher's contemporary in the United States, President Ronald Reagan, was also a great votary of liberalization, and these 2 leaders collectively heralded a new era of economic reforms, which provided the private sector a central place in the national economies of developed nations. No country has remained untouched by this movement. The role of bureaucracy became that of a facilitator rather than regulator in these countries, and the impact of this new spirit of bureaucracy was also felt on the not so developed emergent economies, such as those of South Korea and other Asian tigers. This example also underlines that there is a demonstration effect on developing countries, which imbibe the philosophy and practice of developed nations in promoting their process of growth. Today, the public-private partnership has become a key feature of most instrumentalities of development administration, whether in the developed countries or in developing world. Students, let us now discuss about participatory governance. Development administration in most advanced countries of the West is the primary responsibility of local government institutions in the urban as well as rural levels. In developing countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, the shadow of their colonial heritage still looms large. Even decades of independence have failed to throw up truly autonomous structure of governance that enjoys genuine power over program formulation and implementation. Afflicted with the scarcity of resources, the local self-governing institutions have failed to dominate the development process in most developing countries. Conversely, the developed countries have accorded respectful status to their decentralized governance bodies and have vested them with adequate resources and powers to enable them to initiate, guide and regulate. Students, let us now discuss indicative planning. Starting with France, which adopted the system of indicative planning in 1946 in a structured manner, most other developed countries have at one time or the other created the institutions of planning for giving direction to their socio-economic development. Unlike the practice in developing countries, these developed nations have not adopted detailed or intensive planning. Their planning has been an instrument of indicating the direction of growth and of providing guidelines to the private sector. The objective of the exercise is to integrate the efforts of the government and the private sector in the areas of socio-economic change. Sometimes, planning is confined to a few industries, as has happened in Great Britain in the pre-Thatcher period. Moreover, planning can also be a part of the established processes of economic policy making, as in the case of US, where the President's economic report presented to the Congress every year by President provides direction of economic growth in the coming year. Even the budgetary system in most developed countries carries certain features of annual plans. The word planning, however, is not used frequently in the Western nations, since it has mainly associated with the totalitarian polities. Yet, the acceptability of the process of planning seems to be gaining ground in a subtle manner in most advanced countries. Students, now let us discuss about higher level of integrity in the development administration of global North. In the surveys conducted by Transparency International, most Western developed nations figure high on the integrity score. These scores are based on the opinions of businessmen who interact with the governance system functioning in various nations. Although this may not be the most authentic and reliable indicator for measuring the level of integrity at the cross-national level, yet its significance cannot be underestimated, particularly in the absence of any competing criteria in this respect. Since development administration in the Western nations involves the management of a number of government-run programs like education, health, and anti-poverty, there is a direct contact between the government functionaries and the beneficiaries. It is commendable that one hears very few complaints of irregularities and corruption in the management of government funds at the lower level in developed countries. Over the years, the democratic process and the attendant control system, including those of the free press, have curbed petty corruption. Even though there are occasional scams unearthed in the government system in these nations, yet they do not generally touch the common man. The vigilance machinery functioning in the Western countries has over the years evolved strength and effectiveness, and this has been a deterrent to corrupt practices indulged in by government functionaries. The general level of ethics in public has been relatively high in the Western nations, and as a result, hardly any corrupt practices are highlighted in the press or otherwise remain unpunished. Now, let us discuss responsiveness. Most developed countries are democratic systems, and in democracies, responding positively to people's needs and aspirations is imperative. The new public administration movement in the United States, for instance, places great emphasis on strengthening the attribute of responsiveness of the administrative system. It may be interesting to mention that the new public administration shares with development administration many other features, and little wonder both emerged on the scene during 1960s. Of late, Great Britain is passing through a massive movement of citizens' charters. Most public organizations, including local authorities, have promulgated citizens' charters, which are instruments of assuring to the beneficiaries of public system best attention, services, security, and privileges. These charters are in the form of commitment of the institutions like banks, the police, and development agencies to care for the interest and happiness of the citizen who is now seen as customer. It is appreciable that most British organizations take their charters seriously, and therefore these have improved the level of services to the common man. There has been a great respect for the tradition of transparency and right to information in most developed nations. These trends have been further strengthened in the last few years. Now, let us discuss the innovative spirit of the development administration in global north. One reason why there has been an increasing structural differentiation in the governance system of developed countries is their penchant for imbibing an innovative culture. These nations have never desisted from the experimentations and have therefore attempted to keep their administrative systems in a creative mold. In the United States of America, administrative reforms in the structural sphere are difficult to come by in view of the legislative powers to approve or veto any major governmental reorganization. Yet, the history of the past 30 years goes to prove that the US organs of state have taken initiative in introducing significant transformation in the administrative system. A yearning for greater effectiveness is visible in the efforts made in the realm of administrative reforms in recent years. The spirit of the Brownlow Committee of 1938 and the Hoover Commissions of 1949 and 1955 lives on in the form of continual reforms in the administrative system. In Britain, by virtue of the parliamentary and cabinet government, administrative reforms have been the privilege of the political executive. Notably, every prime minister in the recent memory has tried to initiate reforms in the administrative system and has succeeded in sustaining these. Whether reforms in the local government, functional ombudsman, citizens' charter, or privatization, there has been a continuous flow of reforms in the governance system. Countries like France, Germany, Sweden, Finland, New Zealand, and Canada, to name a few, have been part of new public management enterprise that has stressed upon downsizing of government, debureaucratization, liberalization, privatization, decentralization, responsiveness, and performance orientation. Students, now let us discuss balanced polity. Most developed Western nations have enjoyed political stability. No doubt, there have been exceptions such as France and Germany, but recent years have witnessed political stability even there. France, since 1958, has had a stable regime under the Fifth Republic, while Germany, even after unification, has not encountered any political traumas. A positive outcome of the political stability can be seen in the equilibrium existing between the political system and its administrative subsystem. There has been almost a balance of power between these two significant components of government. The respective roles of the two are clear. The constitutive system is performing inter alia the critical role of lawmaking and policy formulation, while the bureaucratic system has been primarily engaged in the process of rule implementation and providing crucial assistance to the constitutive system in the performance of its functions. Consequently, there is a mutual respect for each other's role, and the case of boundary violation or role conflict are few and far between. This has led to a healthy environment in the governance system. It is opined by most Western scholars that development administration is facilitated in a balanced polity. Dear students, in today's lecture, we studied the meaning and definition of development administration and global north. We also discussed the working of development administration in global north. So, dear students, it was all about today's lecture regarding development administration in global north. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. See you soon with a new topic. Till then, take care. Goodbye.